Welcome and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. After the presentation, there will be a question and answer session. To ask a question at that time, press star, then 1. This conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I would now like to turn the meeting over to Ms. Corinne Cho-Beaulieu. You may begin.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everybody, for joining our call and waiting patiently. This is our last webinar for the year 2009, and we have a few more coming up in January. And this is our All About Repository series where we feature technology solutions from industry leaders, DuraCloud, Spark, and Sun Microsystems. These highly successful webinars are designed to provide overviews of best practices, technology updates, and key trend analysis for academic resource directors, IT managers, digital librarians, repository managers, developers, and curators. Today's webinar is Repositories in the Cloud, How to Participate in the DuraCloud Pilot Program. The DuraSpace organization is conducting a pilot program to test the new cloud-based service, DuraCloud, cloud technologies, use remote computers to provide local services through the Internet. DuraCloud lets an institution provide data storage and access without having to maintain its own dedicated technical infrastructure. Today's webinar is going to be hosted, actually, let me just remind everybody about some upcoming webinars, and then I'll introduce today's speakers. So in January, as I said earlier, we're going to have 2 additional webinars. The first one is about enabling open scholarship, and that will be on Wednesday, January the 13th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And then on the 27th, we are going to have a webinar about the Internet Archive. It's a web archive and Sun Modular Data Center repository. And this is an experiment that we put together with the Internet Archive group. And we're going to hear from our speaker, Chris Carpenter. And she'll share with us the vision behind this initiative and the initial effort and where the technology seems to be headed in general in the future of Internet Archive digital web repository. To register for these webinars, please go to the website below. Okay, and let me introduce today's speakers. We're going to hear from Michelle Timpson, who is the Chief Business Officer at DuraCloud. Second up will be Martin Alsadovic. He's the Assistant Director of the Digital Services Division from the Smithsonian Institution Library. Then we'll hear from Barbara Taranto, who is the Managing Director of the New York Public Library. And last will be Peter Pinch. He's the Director of Technology for Interactive at WGBH. So let me go ahead and turn the presentation over now to Michelle.
Thanks, Corinne. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. So I'm actually the Chief Business Officer of the DuraSpace organization, not DuraCloud. And I'm going to bring this point up because a lot of people get confused. So DuraSpace is a not-for-profit organization that develops open technologies and services for managing durable digital content. And we serve the academic, cultural heritage, and scientific communities. You're familiar probably with other open source technologies we support, mainly DSpace and Fedora Repository platforms. Today, we're going to talk about a new technology that we're developing, which allows our communities to utilize public cloud, or commercial cloud infrastructure called DuraCloud. That's the focus of today's webinar. This is, I think, about the 3rd webinar we've done on DuraCloud. We're going to talk today specifically about the pilot program. We have the presence of our 3 pilot partners that are testing the DuraCloud application in a pilot program funded by NDIP. And from their input and their use cases, we will use that to help develop, hopefully, a robust and useful service and technology for the whole community. So they're each going to tell their stories about why they're using DuraCloud. I'm going to give a brief overview of the DuraCloud technology, but if you want to learn more detail about DuraCloud, I suggest you go to the website, duracloud.org. You'll find a write-up of the technology, some diagrams, as well as past webinars that we've done. I'm also going to talk today about if you want to join the pilot program, we are going to be opening it up to our communities, particularly those that are currently running zSpace and Fedora repositories in the late spring. Okay, now I'm going to advance the slide. There we go. Okay, so the premise of DuraCloud was to really enable preservation support, instant infrastructure, and access and reuse of content in a cloud infrastructure, and to have a mediating platform that sits on top of public cloud commercial providers to allow you to easily utilize these commercial cloud providers cost effectively to do some of these things that it might be difficult to do inside your own institution. This diagram is really a notional diagram which shows the number of interactions you can have with the DuraCloud technology. So DuraCloud itself is, as you a user, you would have your own DuraCloud instance. The components of that DuraCloud instance are a UI, a compute portion, and a store portion. You interact with that DuraCloud instance, which is actually running in the cloud, as a researcher, as a repository user, or as an institution. You might have your own DuraCloud instance. You can push your content through your DuraCloud instance into multiple cloud providers. The current cloud providers we are working with in the pilot are Amazon, Atmos, and Rackspace. Those are the three that are exposed through our pilot program. In the future, we might add others to this network, and we're investigating partnerships with others through the pilot process. This is a diagram of the interaction flow of DuraCloud to give you kind of one level down below the notional diagram. So you as a user would sign up for your DuraCloud instance at the overall DuraCloud website. From there, you would then get your own DuraCloud instance, which would give you the storage and the services as part of that web application. In order to load your content into multiple service providers, you would have the choice to do that through the DuraCloud interface. And you can choose multiple providers to replicate your content through, and it happens through a storage provider interface, which is all built into the application. This next slide shows the server architecture, and where it's really exploded is in terms of the services that are also enabled through DuraCloud. So the DuraCloud instance allows you to replicate your content to multiple storage providers, but then it also provides you with a set of services that you can run on top of your content once it is in a cloud store. So in terms of the architecture, there are multiple services that we will launch and continue to build on in the DuraCloud instance. And these services are packaged primarily in an OSGI manager, but allows you to independently run these services in your DuraCloud instance. For the purposes of the pilot, the key preservation support services that we're looking at is the ability to replicate your content to multiple cloud providers, the ability to synchronize your content between your repository system and your cloud store, the ability to do bit integrity checking, and to have access tools available to you through the DuraCloud instance so that you can find your content. The other services that we're looking at for deployment in the pilot and that we're testing with our pilot partners are data mining tools. So we're working with CHL to potentially implement Taxon Finder, and I'll let Martin speak more to that. We're looking at implementing Kaltura, which is a video streaming platform, and WGBH will talk about their video content using Kaltura. And then the last service that we're looking at is the J2K image serving, which will allow us to do transformation of images as well as serving up of images. Beyond the pilot program, we will continue to expand these services, but these are the ones that we're focusing on specifically for the pilot program. So as I mentioned, our initial cloud providers we're working with for the pilot are Amazon, EMC, and Rackspace. And the 3 pilot partners that are testing the platform today are WGBH, New York Public Library, and VHL. So this is the timeline for the pilot program. We're currently in the phase of uploading all the data into DuraCloud, and that's being done a number of different ways that we'll talk about following this. The next phase is to really start testing the services within the DuraCloud environment. And the first service that we'll be testing is replication, to be followed by image serving and transformation, file format transformation. As I mentioned, in late spring, we're going to be opening up the pilot to beta testers, and these are folks that are interested in learning more about DuraCloud and testing out replication and some of these initial services that we're deploying in DuraCloud for their own use. And we'll be providing direct connectors or plugins from both the DSpace and Fedora Repository so that you can automatically push your content, a copy of your content from your repository into DuraCloud and then perform the sets of services within that DuraCloud environment. If you are interested in signing up to be a beta tester in this program, there is a form that you can fill out to be considered for the beta testing and some of the rules around that on the DuraCloud.org webpage. Our intent is still to launch the service and also to make the code open source, with the time frame for that being in the fall of next year. 2010. So here's some of the links I talked about. The main project page to sign up for the beta. There's the direct link. Some more information about the DuraSpace organization, and frequently asked questions you can find on that wiki page. Okay, with that, I will turn it over to Martin.
Hi, everybody. I'm representing the Biodiversity Heritage Library today, and I just wanted to sort of give you a bit of a background on who we are and what we're actually doing and why we're using the DuraCloud pilot project. The DHL is a consortium of about 12 U.S. and U.K. institutions, natural history and botanical garden libraries. The focus of our digitization project is on the taxonomic literature, which has all of the important scientific names that represent the naming of species for the last 200 and some odd years. So what we want to do with the taxonomic literature is make it widely available for a number of purposes, and that's one of the reasons why we think this will be a good pilot project for us to get the information out there and represent it in a lot of different ways, duplicate it, replicate it, etc. Currently, most of our material is stored in the Internet Archive, but what we don't have is the ability to self-host it at any one of our institutions. So again, a distributed environment is very important for us. You can see from these graphs that our content is growing dramatically as we have a number of different scanning operations around the world. So we're increasing a lot of the content on a regular basis. One of the things that we do want to do with this pilot project is, in addition to the replication and storage, is, as Michelle mentioned, run some of these services on it. The Taxon Finder is an algorithm that will work its way through text, works through the OCR text, seeking out the binomial names within the content. So, for instance, Homo sapiens as a species name, the Taxon Finder will look through text and find things that look like a binomial name. So we call these name strings. What we want to do is be able to sort of peek through all of this content using the Taxon Finder tool. And by putting this up in the cloud area, we can have a lot more content. And as Michelle mentioned, once we have a lot of even more content up there, it'll be interesting to see how this tool will work in that environment. Additionally, we also are really a big fan of the J2K for JPEG 2000 serving. It's what we currently use on our own portal site for DHL, and it's a really good tool for delivering JPEG 2000s, which are very important when you have image-heavy files. So those are sort of some of the key things that we hope to get out of the project. The other interesting things are many of our institutions are either Fedora or DSpace participants, so in addition to our Internet Archive content, at some point down the line we would also like to integrate some more of those other types of content into the process. So again, it's important for us to test replication, storage, and services in the cloud across these multiple institutions, see how the pilot project works in terms of hosting the content, moving content, large amounts of content between the different sources, and also linking to the different types of cloud providers that are out there. So again, there'll be a test in terms of scalability. And that's pretty much the basis for our participation in the pilot.
Great. Thank you very much, Martin. Next up, we are going to Barbara Taranto from the New York Public Library.
Hello.
Barbara.
Hi, good morning. I'm just pulling up my document. I would like to thank Corinne for the promotion. She said I was the managing director of New York Public Library, which that was true, but I'm managing director of the New York Public Library Digital Lab, which is a good thing too, but not the same rank. Anyway, NYPL Lab, to just give you a little bit of background, is an innovation engine that works for the Library Strategic Planning Office. We have in our portfolio several projects, but some of the key ones are the implementation of an enterprise-wide Fedora Repository, Drupalization of the library's public website, which is a huge project, an open layers application for historical maps in the library's collection, and tracking and measuring library relationships in the social software space. So those are just some of the things we're up to. So I'm going to take you through the slides. I have very few. So the goals for our participation is to test the computing side of cloud computing. It seems to me that cloud computing is a ubiquitous term and not very clearly understood. We actually want to do some work in the cloud. We don't just want to put some storage up there. We want to see what we can do up there. We also want to develop some comparison cross-model for processing in and out of the cloud. What would it take for us to do some of this work locally, and what will it take for us to do the work in the cloud? Essentially, we have ongoing processes on our data. We don't see these as one-time events, but that's something we're going to end up doing constantly and providing as a service from the library. We wanted to pilot high-volume data transfers. Nice to have the content, but unless we can move it across multiple platforms, it doesn't become very useful to others. And we wanted to develop a file migration workflow. Right now, we have approximately 1.2 million JPEGs in our storage, and we'd like to see what it's like to migrate them to another platform, and then to make another format, and to decide whether we're going to keep the originals in the repository or whether we're going to keep both copies, or are we going to call them versions. We have a whole lot of institutional decisions to make on this matter. Our use case was to migrate access files from JPEG to the decoded JPEG 2000 image server and to re-ingest the process content into our local Fedora repository. Currently, the JPEGs are identified as a data stream associated with Fedora object, and that's all nice and neat because we actually control the naming space and we control the files. They want to know what it's like to do migration in the cloud, to name these objects in the cloud, to re-ingest them into the Fedora repository and see if we can manage both sets of files. Milestones for this project are to baseline the compression ratio for maps versus manuscripts versus continuous tone. Let me go into that a little bit. The Dakota or J2K engine, you can control the compression rate from TIFF files to JPEG 2000. And you might want different compression rates based on the kind of content you have. So if you're shooting 1-to-1 and you have a cigarette card, which is approximately 1 inch long, you want a different compression rate when you blow it up than you do for something that's a map that has very detailed line drawing. So one of the things we want to do is optimize the compression rate so that we're storing at optimal levels so that we don't have more data than we need to serve the purpose or for the syntax of the image. That's true of manuscripts, continuous tone, meaning photographs, etc. We want the baseline processing times. We want to know how long it takes to send a full batch full of files through the Dakota engine, turn them around, re-ingest them, and be able to serve them up to the public. We want to baseline what delivery from the cloud is like. What is it like to receive images that are zoomable from the cloud? Does that measure with what we can do locally? If it does, could we distribute that? How could we exploit that? And lastly, we want to baseline the integration of the migrated files into the repository. As I mentioned earlier, there are a whole lot of issues, especially about identity and version control, that we will have to address. Lastly, future uses. We're interested in different types of remote processing, not just for image files, but for data migration, for relationship building, for RDF processing and conversion of multiple text files into RDF files. We're also most interested in this expandable and extensible working storage for triaging collections. The library holds a tremendous number of AV materials that will be digitized, and we need a space, not a permanent space, but a space that we can look at our content and do some triage and evaluation about deduping. And you need a lot of space for video and audio. You can't just go out and buy servers and say, I get it up tomorrow and be able to use it. So this is an ideal opportunity for us to know what's going on. The other thing we'd like to use it for is a metadata queue. We'd like to be able to do preliminary metadata on our content and send this stuff up to the cloud, build a web interface and let other people have at it. We're interested in shared data applications such as rectifying files that are also in the queue. Special software is needed for that, but that's something we're interested in crowdsourcing. And we're also interested in cross-collection collaborations, of course. So that about does it for me. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Barbara. Next up, we have Peter Pinch.
Hi, this is Peter Pinch. I'm Director of Technology for Interactive at WGBH. If you're unfamiliar with WGBH, we're the PBS and NPR member station in Boston. We're the single largest producer of television and web for the public broadcasting system. And I've got a couple of our logos up here, just a sampling. But with reference to DuraCloud, our interest is more related to our archive. WGBH signed on in 1951, and we have about nearly 700,000 items in our archive, which are a range of finished films, raw interviews, stock footage, on a variety of formats. You can see we've got a number of film cans as well as every single obsolete audio and videotape format there is. And we're interested in increasing access to this archive. So we've been working on visual projects, and the goal, the opportunities that we see working with DuraCloud in the near term is experimenting with access to the streaming versions of our video and audio files, particularly using the Kaltura player with added functionality of being able to embed the video, do some clipping or other limited editing. And we're looking very carefully at what the cost of the model will be, and then also does it help us with sustainability in the sense of maintaining the streaming services. We also want to experiment with preservation of our uncompressed audio and video files. As mentioned in some of the other presentations, storage for video is an issue, and being able to expand it on demand is very tempting. We're also looking at costs, and again, what the reliability is with things like the bit comparison services. It's a little too early, but I'm very interested also in some of the opportunities for compute services, things like transcoding video formats, doing some analysis of the videos to things like aligning transcripts or doing speech-to-text analysis. For the pilot, our use case, we're actually aligning another pilot project called the American Archive. And this is a project involving a large number of public television stations funded by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And the eventual goal is to provide a service for preserving and providing access to public broadcasting material in the United States. The pilot is focused on television and radio material around civil rights era and World War II. And we've got we're almost done processing 110 hours of video, 120 hours of audio. And that works out to about 12 gigabytes of access versions, which is material that we can handle on our web services, but we want to see if we find some new opportunities with DuraCloud. And then we're getting close to 10 terabytes of uncompressed video. So that will be a new experience for us. And that was my last slide. I went pretty quick. And we'll move on to if we can open the lines for Q&A.
Thank you. At this time, if you have a question or any comments, please press star, then 1, and record your name when prompted. Again, to ask a question, press star, then 1, and record your name when prompted. I show no questions at this time.
Great. Thanks so much, Matt. Michelle, do you have any wrap-up or any final last comments that you want to make in regards to the pilot program?
Sure. So as I mentioned, for more information, I suggest people go to the DuraCloud.org project page. If you're running a Fedora or DSpace repository and you're interested in becoming one of the beta users of DuraCloud for testing the system for particularly preservation support, this would be replication into multiple cloud stores, being able to find your content through the web-based interface, being able to do some bit integrity checking, then I suggest you go to the DuraCloud.org project page and sign up. We will be then looking at the folks that have signed up and selecting probably 25 candidates for the beta program, which is going to start in late spring. Also, if you have any other questions, you can always email me directly, mkempin@duraspace.org.
Excuse me, we did have 2 questions that came on the phone. Our first question comes from Kathleen Cameron from the University of California, San Francisco. Your line's open.
Hi, I had a question about prepping the video files for Kaltura. What considerations did you need to take into consideration when prepping the files for streaming over the cloud?
Well, one of the things that we're going to be discovering, this is Peter answering the question, but We have existing specs that we use for H.264 streaming, and I'm not expecting there to be a difference about whether it's cloud-based or otherwise Fedora. So this is roughly akin to what you would get from a YouTube.
Thank you.
We did have a question on the chat screen. One of them I'll just answer. On the beta testing, we are specifically looking for current DSpace and Fedora users that have content in their repositories, because we're trying to test out in the beta test really the robustness of the plugins, which are the connectors that basically push your content automatically between your repository instance and your DuraCloud instance, and trying to really make sure that integration is seamless and useful to the community, and also get feedback on that. However, if you don't have a DSpace Fedora repository and you are interested in participating in DuraCloud in some other way, I am collecting those use cases as well. And if we have an opportunity beyond the repository beta testing to open it up to different use cases, those will be in consideration. So please do fill out the form even if you're not a DSpace Fedora user. You just probably won't get into that beta program that I'm talking about today.
We did have one more question on the phone line, and it is from Michael Levy. So your line is open.
He just answered my question. I also repeated the question online, so I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, there's one other question on the chat about costing model, so if I can get some clarification on that, I'd be happy to answer it. Oh yeah, so the beta program is completely at no cost to the beta tester, with the exception of, your own labor and time to participate. Okay.
Hey, thank you so much, Michelle. Thanks, everybody, for your time today. This concludes our webinar for today. Again, we have 2 additional webinars in January, and if you can refer back to the slides, we'll have the URL. This playback and the presentation will be available shortly on our website.
Corinne?
Yes.
If participants have, this is Barbara Toronto, if participants have particular questions they want to take offline to any of these folks, how do they find us?
They can certainly send Michelle, so we left everybody with Michelle's email address,
right.
And then everybody should have mine as well from the invitation.
I'm happy to direct.
Free. Yep. Okay. Both of us are happy to direct questions back to each of the presenters. So thanks, everybody, for your time, and we wish everybody a very happy and safe holiday season. Thanks again. Talk to you in January.
Right.
Bye-bye. Thanks.